الله أكبر الله أكبر.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رحمة المهداة والنعمة المسداة وعلى من والاه. The Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, after he finished his first station of his journey, which is diving into the theology, reading the book of theology, al-Kalam, and mastered the science of al-Kalam of theology, the science that developed later in the early century of Islam to respond to the tension that took place in terms of understanding the creed and the basic foundation of Islam, because of the Greek philosophy and other books had come to Muslim world and created kind of confusions about what Tawheed, relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look like. And it become more of the what we call the philosophical discussions that have not taken place during the early Islam. And as you look to Islam and you ask what are the basic foundation and belief during Rasulullah time that have been taught, you find that Rasulullah in the hadith, in his teaching sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or even the Quran, which is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it addresses the issue of Tawheed, addressing basic questions. We call them, in philosophy, the ultimate questions. How did we get here? What is the purpose of life? What will happen after we die? And what is our relationship with the world around us? And who determined that? Which is the Sharia aspect of it. Very basic. In terms of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Islam have been always simple in his Tawheed, in creed, belief. And the Surah Al-Ikhlas summarized that concept of Tawheed in a very simple way, but also in very crystal clear foundation with no compromise and with no confusion. And therefore the concept of Ahad and Samad was very clear in Islam. It's unique, God Almighty is unique, undividable, nothing like it to Him. I was talking to a Jewish scholar who told me that he finds a lot of comfort in studying Islamic theology, in addressing the issue of modern questions about God. And of course he was speaking of the experience of the three philosophers in Spain, a Jewish philosopher, a Muslim philosopher, and a Christian philosopher, who get together with Maimun and the others and discussing issue of deep discussions around theology. And he was relating to the issue of monotheism, that Islam does not, or reading the text does not confuse you. Text does not confuse you at all. What will confuse you, the commentary of the text. But the Quran itself in Tawheed never confuse you. You cannot read the Quran and you can say, I don't know who Allah is. Not at all. There's no a single verse will confuse you. All of these confusions came later from interpretations. And therefore, Ilm al-Kalam was good in addressing the confusion came and to try to filter the misinterpretation of the text, the commentary. But today, as you're speaking, today as you're speaking to different group of young people about theology, the confusion in the mind of the Muslim young people, not because of the Quran, because of the ideas coming from outside about whose God is. But these ideas they have in their mind have not been tested well against with the Quran, against the teaching of Islam. Or the people who teaching Islam, they're not equipped enough to respond to the evolution and the other questions, which is very sophisticated philosophy. It is not a simple philosophy. And that's why I would like just to mention a few things about addressing the confusion in people's mind about God, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, when Musa alayhi salam was challenged with the magician, and the magician threw their sticks and their ropes, what did they do actually? سحروا أعين الناس. Quran says so. But Allah said the trick is not a simple trick. He said it was a great trick. Allah says so. Imagine Allah giving the credit to the magician, says they did great magic. But my greatness is greater than the greatness of the magic. Because they did this because I allowed them as a human being to have this ability of bringing this confusion because they're using their mind and so forth. But who is the ultimate power is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سحروا أعين الناس. سحروا أعين الناس means they let people in their eyes see this great magic. وَاسْتَرْهَبُوهُمْ. Look at this very important aspect of the ideology. Because if you use the sihr as an ideology, responding to Musa alayhi salam miracles, Quran does not belittle their power. He did not. He said, وَاسْتَرْهَبُوهُمْ. وَاسْتَرْهَبُوهُمْ. The word istarhabuhum here is a very interesting concept. Because istarhabuhum, it means that they have them to have fear and they were worried about what those magicians have brought. Then the Quran also did not belittle their work and said, وَجَاءُوا بِسِحْرٍ عَظِيمٍ. Therefore, teaching young people Islam in America, you cannot dismiss evolution theory. This is a very strong theory. You cannot dismiss the issue of philosophy. This is a very strong literature, very rational and well done. You cannot just dismiss it like that. And therefore, your simple tawheed has to be taught first in order for them to respond to that. But if they come you with the evolution theory, you cannot dismiss it. Because the young person sees a very rational logic, you can see, and a very rational argument, I may say, before them. And that's exactly what Imam Ghazali did in this journey. He did not belittle what's taking place in his time. That's why when he's speaking from the personal experience, it's very appealing though. He is very exposing himself. He said, I have a lot of doubt, I had problems. And that's why when he said, I dived into the theology, ilm al-kalam, I want to see what are the arguments out there those other scholars of ilm al-kalam have responded to. فده يا سعادة السفير ممكن تجي عايز كرسي هنا كرسي بليز قصير ضمنها كراسي هنا therefore the theology at the time of ilm al-kalam, developed theology, is because of all the questions have appeared or come presenting themselves in the Muslim world. They did not exist during Rasulullah time. The questions today for the American Muslims, what is ilm al-kalam of America today? What is ilm? Are you going to take me back to Jahamiya and the debate between Ash'ari and Maturidiyya and Athariyya? Are you going to take me back to that? Or are you going to be able to address the questions in the people's mind of today? Young people grow up going to Sadr school, Sunday school, and come and say, I don't believe in God anymore. How would you address this issue? What that?
I said atheism is a problem now that never...
It is the fastest growing religion in America, atheism. The fastest growing religion, not Islam. Therefore, you have to be careful of addressing this issue in a more sophisticated way. That's why I'm teaching this book of Imam al-Ghazali journey. Now, I would like to say three things very quickly before I go to the issue of philosophy, because we're addressing the issue of theology now. Remember, Imam al-Ghazali, he said that the ulama al-kalam, their objective is فيحصل منه ما يمحل بالكلية ظلمات الحيرة في اختلاف الخلق أو في اختلافات الخلق. He's saying that they trying to address the confusions of the different theory have been presented itself during that time. For ulama al-kalam, they want to take people back to the original source, to the Sunnah, the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah to explain the simple Tawheed. But in order to go to that route, you have to jump many hurdles and obstacles that have been created already in your way. You cannot take people to the straight path without removing the obstacles. And that's where the debate comes. But he said, although he come to know that was important to have this strong theological argument and this theological methodology of responding to the confusion happening at this time. But he said, my case was a special case. He says, والغرض الآن حكاية حالي. He said, now, I would like just to, he said, the point I'd like to make, he said, to explain my personal condition. لا الإنكار على من استشفى به. He said, I'm not denying the fact that there's some people have benefit from the theology that was established at the time and have responded to their need. فإن أدوية الشفاء تختلف باختلاف الداء. This is very important, by the way. Imams in America, the challenge is that to know what is the challenge of the person before you, a spiritual challenge. Because you cannot give same prescriptions to every person. I grew up in Sudan, and they used to give the penicillin, and they give you particular medication for everything that you can. The doctors sometimes. It works in some places. But you have to be careful. If somebody comes to you and says, I have an identity issue, I'm confused about being Muslim or not, or I'm confused about this aspect of Islam, why it is haram. Or I'm really, at this moment, I drink, or I'm on drugs, and whatever may be the problem is. The answer cannot be simply, this is haram. This is not acceptable, and quoting verse of the Quran. More likely, a person come before you, he already knows it is haram. And he's not coming, get a confirmation, it is not acceptable. What he would like you to do is to empower them to be able, or to enable them to overcome the struggle that they have. And let me explain to you this from the Sunnah of Rasulullah, because Imam Ghazali make a case here. قالوا كم من دواء ينتفع به مريض ويستضر به آخر. He said, how many medication that somebody will benefit from it and heal or be cured from the disease they may have, and another person may use the same medication and get more sick or get sick. Now, look to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ giving people medication. A man came to Rasulullah and said, Rasulullah, awsini. give me advice. He did not say what my problem is. But from my background of counseling, I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Rasul what this person is struggling with. Which today we call it in counseling intake. You will not be able to help someone without knowing their background first. As I'm let me tell me a little bit about their history, where you're going through, where you come from, those kind of things, was your parents alive or died, whatever it may be. You want to look to the support system, you want to look where they come from, what the struggle they went through, in order to answer the right question. That's what Imam Malik used to do also with people. Today, we have called drive-through fatwas. People like just fax machine. Fatwa like text message. Yes, do it, don't do it. No, you have to know where the person coming from. Therefore, الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم man will say أوصني. يقال لا تغضب. Don't get angry. صلى الله عليه وسلم. قال أوصني. He said, give me advice. He said, لا تغضب. Don't get angry. قال أوصني. قال لا تغضب. He said, don't get angry. Okay? This man asked that for an advice and it's been given, don't get angry. Another person asked Rasulullah, what the best things I should do? What the best things as a Muslim you should advise me, or you will advise me what? He said, take care of your parents. Another person asked him, he said, pray on time. What are you talking about here? You're talking about every person has a particular struggle they coming through, or they coming with it, and then Rasulullah gave them advice that match their condition. But Imam al-Ghazali said, although ilm al-kalam was very powerful science, was very good, and many people benefit from it, but it was not helping me. The other problem that I see, because somebody gave an advice to someone and did not work on someone, he might say, this is not a good advice, I should not give it to another person. Now, you have to know that maybe the misdiagnosing the person before you, but the advice still could be valid for somebody else. Okay. Therefore, this number one point I would like to make. Number two, in the issue of theology, the problem sometimes is not the problem of conviction or belief. It's a problem sometimes of surrendering yourself to the belief, submitting yourself to the belief. See what I'm saying? And this,
you know it here.
You know it here, but you're struggling with it in your heart. Therefore, in order for you to justify not following what is, your desire is not asking you to do, you throw the baby with what? With bathwater. He said, I'm going to throw Islam out. I'm not a Muslim anymore. But deeply there, that a person have conviction that Allah exists, Rasulullah is a prophet of Allah, but in order to free themselves from the obligation of Islam, they say, I don't believe anymore. So that, in other words, all society, all my family, all my community do not expect any expectation from me to behave in a particular way because I'm just going to deny this whole thing. You know where that come from? That come from the fact that the community, the society, does not accept or realize that some people that have particular spiritual struggle and they're not there to fulfill all of this obligation. Therefore, we create metrics, and by them we judge a person, and become so much pressure on judging that person. Says, guys, what? I'm out of here. يعني نفتن الناس في دينهم. يعني we test people so much they withdraw completely. You see what I'm saying? The third issue, and by the way, this is the issue of Iman. That's why the Mu'tazilite made a mistake, although they're very rational people, when they say مرتكب الكبيرة كافر. A person who commits a great sin is out of Islam. This is, if you're telling me if a person drinks or commit one of the kaba'ir, you tell him out of Islam, You give him a license, says, okay, since you're not Muslim anyway, you know, keep going. Exactly. What's the benefit of that?
Then why does the Sharia have had for Muslims if they're not going to commit those crimes?
Yeah, yes. And yes, of course, there's a remedy. You're right. Remedy in Islam.
If you are not a Muslim, you won't need the
Not only that, the Quran uses Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu and talking to the mu'mineen, although they may have committed this crime. Yeah, and one of the most moving hadith. And by the way, I don't like anyone to misunderstand this because I also have been taped on this. I'm not saying ever a person should take lightly committing major sins. It's called kaba'ir. A person will be punished on the day of judgment. But the man who drank alcohol in front of Rasulullah and they punished him, and one of the Sahaba cursed him, what Rasulullah said? قال لا تلعنه إنه يحب الله ورسوله. He said, don't curse him. This man loves Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You ask yourself that how come Rasulullah will make a statement about a man who just commit a sin like this of drinking alcohol in front of not Muhammad Magid, not brother Hamid Umar, in front of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and yet he says he loves Allah and Rasul. Because you see, that statement itself, it helped a person to stay Muslim. When you tell them the goodness in their heart, when you appeal to that core of the iman in their heart, that is very important. For he said that, although the man have done this. Abu Dhar, when Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu asked Rasulullah sallam, can a Muslim drink? Can a Muslim, a mu'min, he said yes. But he said, can he lie? He said no. Because lying is greater than drinking alcohol. What I mean by that? If a person, look at Islam, if a person remain honest, although he might commit major sins, eventually that person will come back. Because honesty is to really do this soul searching and checking oneself. When a person becomes really honest person, he or she eventually will realize their mistakes. But if they're lying, they would call, what you call it in counseling and psychology, a person who lies is always in denial. And a person in denial never repents. Take it from me. A person in denial never repents. Because say, I'm not doing it. There are people in denial in the day of judgment. Can you believe that? They stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قالوا والله ربنا ما كنا مشركين. They said, by Allah we never commit shirk. Quran said, كذبوا على أنفسهم. They lied to themselves because they cannot lie to Allah. They're lying to themselves. But they in denial even in day of judgment. What can you cure? They cannot cure denial like that. But the first things is recognition, admitting things. And the opposite of denial is acknowledgement, and acknowledgement stems from the concept of honesty, being honest. When a person is honest, he will not be in denial. Therefore, this is the second point I'm making. The third point I'm making, then we'll go to what Imam Ghazali then talk about the philosophy. The issue of philosophy, which is another issue challenging to Muslim American today. The other issue in theology sometimes is not only the desire, but also is the social surrounding that impact the person's belief system. We are social beings. A person get impacted by the social circle, the safety net that they create for themselves. And I will say here in very clear terms and a statement that young Americans, Muslims, young people growing in America, one of the biggest problems of their belief system and identity issue is the social circles. It is the challenge in the masajid. Can the masajid, mosque, create an environment of a social comfort where a person, their identity have been preserved because the company, they keep reinforcing their value and their belief system? And can we make it comfortable enough for them to accept, for them to be themselves, and for us to accept certain even shortcoming of them in regard of their social behavior, in order to maintain their creed and their belief and try to improve on the social behavior gradually? Or are we creating measurement and expectation as a young person walk into the door and say, you know, I don't like the way you wear clothes, there's too tight jeans, you know, your parents don't teach you good things, come back and you will not want a scarf in your head. This is a masjid, this is not a nightclub, blah, blah, blah. Little by little. How Rasulullah transformed the Arabia? The Quraysh and the Arabs, they're not the purest. They come with all kind of their problems. Yes. Read the Quran. They call him from the screen from the behind his apartment in الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات. If you read the Quran, you find how people behave with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You realize those are the believers. That the Quran have disciplined them, and there's a gradual change. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people grabbing him, and he would say, just let go, or give you what you want. Can you know, if somebody will grab any one of us here, hold it like this, subhanallah, or grab me in front of you guys, people get upset. I know people, we have love for each other, but how would I react? The problem with taking things personal. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is rahmah lil alameen, understood his mission is to cure people. If anyone have disease, he is ready to give them some medication. And he understood that Rasulullah, this man under stress, therefore when he grabbed him, he said, give me, it's not for belong to your mother and your father. This person is a believer, is a Muslim. Who did that with Rasulullah is not a munafiq.
Also because the Rasulullah, you know, if he gets upset with somebody, the whole universe is behind him. I mean, you know,
the Sahaba,
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
yeah.
if he says anything against somebody, it can happen at that same time. He has to know that you know, his displeasure can also bring a wrath on that person.
Yes, but Allah said to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَبِرَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. He said, you are soft because I put this rahmah on you. But he told him the consequences of otherwise. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If otherwise you are harsh on them, you are difficult with them, you are mean to them, you will not see anyone around you. لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. They would despair, you know. You will not see this love and surrounding of you, with you or around you. Rasulullah. Therefore, it is important to use the same concept of rahmah. Young people leave masjid because of lack of rahmah of the others. I just tell you that. There are some people come to this masjid or any masjid, they have bad experience once and they disappear. They will never come back again. Therefore, we have to be careful. People sitting here. Every young lady walking to this masjid, every young man walking to this masjid, because it's not no longer theology. It's how I've been treated in the masjid. I was reading watching the commentary this weekend. It's called the Unmosque. Have you seen that? You have to see that Unmosque. Have you seen it? Yeah, do you see the young lady there? She said how many times she was get the pushback coming to the masjid? The unmosque. Therefore, you have to be careful, and I've been repeating this at Adam Center, because we have to create an oasis for those young people to come in. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should not discipline them or teach them Islam. I'm not saying that. But how you do it, it determines how that person, whether they stay in Islam or leave sometimes. And one of the story that people say to me, I don't like this story. I said, this is a story from the Sunnah, whether you like it or not. Of the man urinated in the mosque. For me, this is just outrageous. You know, a person walked in the masjid of Rasulullah and he relieved himself in the masjid. The Sahaba said, oh, goodness. Rasulullah said, no. Come down. Let him finish, then we can talk to him later. But let him finish. This person, if doesn't, in this, many shoes will be in his head, somebody will be kicking him, and he will be treated so badly, probably will say, oh my goodness, this is horrible, I'm not going to come back to the masjid. What the Rasulullah did, the very interesting thing is, Rasulullah did not ask him to clean it. He showed him how by asking the Sahaba, said, let's bring the zanub of water, like a pocket of water, and just put the water in the place. And then the ulama, scholars of fiqh, they took out of this the concept of tahara. As my father rahmahullah used to say, that it's good that you address the issue of tahara here, but you should not forget the story behind it. How we get there. Because sometimes you might call the istinbat. You come to the conclusion of a ruling, but sometimes the story behind the ruling itself is very interesting. Because it's how the ruling came about. Don't disconnect the narrative, the story of the fiqh. You know, the fiqh become laws, but for every ruling, wudu and so forth has a narrative with it. How the Rasul make his wudu, and the Sahaba radhiyallahu alayhim. Therefore, this is the third point I was making, is the issue of social network and safety. I call it safety network, that we need to create that kind of environment to help people to stay Muslims. Now, because approaching the time, Imam Ghazali rahimahullah said after he finished the theology, he went to the philosophy. He studied philosophy. And very interesting, Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, he studied philosophy so much, as some ulama says that he swallowed the philosophy and he couldn't throw it up. Falsafa, ما استطاع يتقيأها. And that's why it's one of the most important aspects of responding to the challenge of your time is to try to master the sciences of your time if you want to respond to them. I have imams, I'm sorry to say that, I was on the cameras. They say Darwinism is kufr, but they never read Darwin theory. I asked one of them, I said, did you read? He said, I never read Darwin. I don't need to read it. I heard people talking about it. I said, it's important. If you say Darwinism is kufr, then the person said, what is Darwinism? What Darwin said actually. What is the evolution theory based on? Are we responding, are we saying everything about evolution is wrong as Muslim? Or some of the aspects we can accept? A person has to know what they're talking about. يقولون يعني الحكم على الشيء فرع عن تصوره. This is something in the usul. In order to make a judgment or ruling about any matters, you have to be able to understand it, to encompass what this is all about. So then you make the ruling. But you cannot jump the gun and make the rulings. Therefore, I would say that here in the issue of modern philosophy is different from old philosophy. You may read the Greeks and the Romans and all of the old philosophy, but there's a contemporary philosophy. You have to be able to respond to it, you have to be up to date today. Imam al-Ghazali, he says, and look his fairness. الفلسفة أحاصيلها وما يذم منها وما لا يذم. He said, what are the general concept of philosophy? What is the major themes of philosophy? You're going to speak about it. And what things are acceptable, what is not acceptable of it. And here it's very important. Although Imam Ghazali wrote the book Tahafut al-Falasifa, responding, and Ibn Rushd responded to him with Tahafut al-Tahafut. By the way, both of them are masterpiece. I have to give credit to both, of course. Ibn Rushd himself was big brain. عقل كبير يعني. Ibn Rushd is Maliki and al-Ghazali is Shafi'i. مذهب وايز رحمه الله جميعا. فإمام al-Ghazali, when he wrote about the Tahafut al-Falasifa, he spoke about it out of the personal experience that he related here. He wanted people to take different methodology of ma'rifah, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Ghazali no longer, after he studied the philosophy, believed the intellectual exercise is the only way, or cannot be the most reliable way of getting to this path. Therefore, he is speaking about the spiritual experience, the mystical, the spiritual experience of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he believed that the philosophers have wasted a lot of time of people of philosophizing Islam, not applying Islam. And therefore, but you have to know that Ibn Rushd and the others, they come from the background is that the philosophy become a reality, and you have to equip Muslims to be able to understand the contemporary intellectual challenges of their time in order to respond to it, and the only way to respond to it to develop their own Islamic philosophy. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah premise is that if you go to this path, then where are you going to end? Are you going to keep expanding this? And then you're taking people away from the simplicity of Islam? Are all or Islam become the Islam of the elite, of the intellectuals, become intellectual exercise? How about the Joe Muhammad on the street and Ahmed on the street? What are you going to do with that? Therefore, this is what he says here. وما يكفر فيه قائلا وما لا يكفر قائله وما لا يكفر. He said there's certain things, if a person will say something, it may be a statement of kufr, meaning that a person will reject the principle of Islam using rational. And certain things, he said, a philosopher will say, and it is not against the teaching of Islam. وما يبدع فيه وما لا يبدع. Bid'ah, innovation, certain things that is considered is not part of Islam, a person have brought it into, and some of them they don't. And this is the fairness, being fair. Imam al-Ghazali addressing this. And then he says, a little bit become harsher on the philosopher. He said that some of what they say, they have plagiarized, or they took from people who spoke the truth, من كلام الحق. وما سرقوه من كلام أهل الحق. وما مزجوه بكلامهم لترويج باطلهم في درجة ذلك وكيفية الحصول نفرة النفوس من ذلك الحق. Here, I just want to say three things very quickly regarding American Muslims relating to this issue. The problem sometimes when we read people entire religion, they make some statement as truthful. but the conclusion they come with it is wrong. And by the way, this is everything that a person sometimes does in life. Sometimes may overreact or something. The first premise may be correct, but the conclusion is wrong. I give an example. If somebody comes to me and says, you know, I have a sister wearing hijab, did business with her, and she said that she practiced Muslim, and she cheated me in my business. Or I have somebody with a long beard, wearing a kufi and so forth, he didn't pay my rent, he ran away with my money. Is this true or not? This statement could happen or not. The problem is the conclusion. And therefore, everyone wearing beard is a liar, is a thief. Don't deceive by people wearing beard. I don't like people having beard. I don't like mullahs. Those women wearing hijab, they're hypocrite, blah, 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 blah. By the way, this, I'm just not saying anything of that, okay? That person make a statement and generalize for everybody and put in their Facebook. Somebody else reading it, they come to me and says, for example, you know, I no longer believe those people who present themselves as good Muslims are good Muslims. So why? My friend just now posted a horrible story on her Facebook saying a sister did this to her or a brother did this to him. He comes to the masjid 5 times a day, blah, blah, blah. The story may be valid, the conclusion is wrong. One person make a mistake, it cannot be passed on everyone else. Okay? And therefore, this kalamu ala al-haq, even in the textbook I read in America, you know, I review some of the social sciences book, and they make a statement, for example, about an event. Muslims, you know, or a Muslim person have done this and that. Or they might say an opinion in Islam, a fiqh opinion, and they generalize this about Islam. And that may be not an opinion that is the most popular or the most accepted. But they took it from the book. Or they take a historical fact, they place it there, and they misinterpret it. And therefore, what I would like, for example, I have young people come to me and said, I just want to ask you this verse in the Quran or not. And one time when a young person told me the following, listen to this. He said, Imam Magid, I bring you a verse in the Quran, and I was told this Quran, but I'm praying that it's not the Quran. I saw the verse, I said, this is Quran. I was so devastated, the person said, hold it. He said to me, you know why I'm upset? Because I said to people in email, it cannot be Quran. This is not Quran. I said, why don't you just research it? Google it. Come on. But because he's emotionally invested, he wants to be able to, don't have an answer. He doesn't have the answer. For the verse, he wants a simple answer, and the simple answer what? Let the verse disappear. But he loves Islam. This young man loves Islam, loves to be Muslim. And therefore, out of defense of Islam, he rejected the verse, he couldn't understand the interpretation of it.
He was rejecting the interpretation.
He rejected the interpretation.
The verse.
No, I'm saying,
Yeah.
or what had been represented to him. Therefore, I sat him down and explained to him what this verse, what it means, what the context of it, and so forth and so on. You can see the biggest smile in his face. You know, actually, when I was leaving, he gave me a big hug. And he also helped me, he didn't let go quickly. Because he felt like his iman being reconfirmed, his faith being, you know, reestablished. And he said to me, actually he suggested to me, why don't we get all the controversial issues in Islam and have a halaqah with youth and young people, or a class, and try to respond to those things out there. Then this could be a project for Alim. Seriously.
Right.
Everything that controversial, bring it. The Alim is an Alim program that for young people, and mashallah, Dr. Jackson and other teachers. Put it out there. Says, those are the questions being faced with. Let us respond to them. Shubuhat. And I would like to end here by saying that the same thing about the logic that people used in addressing the issue called organized religion. You know, a young person also come to me, and he said that he become having trouble with organized religion. You know what I mean by organized religion? Organized religion means institution, means being Muslim, to go to the masjid, to go to the synagogue, to go to the church. They call organized religion. And he said to me, I have a friend of mine who convinced me that organized religion is really have a lot of culture, a lot of saying of the clergy, mixing and so forth. Why don't we free ourselves from that? I said, what do you mean by that? He said, I want to be Muslim, but I don't like to come to the masjid, I don't like to come to the Jum'ah. Therefore, I don't like to be with the organized religion. And I said to him, your assumption here that all the organized religion have problems. Some organized religion, they do have problems. But why don't you try to come to Adam Center and tell me the challenge you're facing as being a member of the community and see how I address it or not. Yes, I tell you, this person I'm talking about is a member of this community. He does come to the prayer and he has no problem with organized religion now. But the logic behind it is that organized religion have done a lot of damages and corruptions. It's true in some aspect of it, but you cannot pass judgment without experiencing yourself and try to address the challenges. Throwing the baby with bath water again. The reason I'm teaching this class, as I said, and we call it God in the Modern World, because I do believe the issue of Tawheed today no longer that debate that happened in the past century is real issue of materialism, atheism, and social environment that either foster belief or take person out of belief. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر ان الانسان لفي خسر الا الذين امنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر